It's both an honor and a privilege to be here today talking about negative beliefs in your marriage. And as I look at my own clinical practice, what I've noticed is that this concept alone can cause much damage in a relationship. And not only have I seen this working with couples, but I've actually also experienced negative thinking in my own relationship. And that's again why I am excited to be presenting this material. As we kind of begin, what I want to do is kind of share with you something that happened in my own family that really made me aware of this whole concept, and it was something that, quite frankly, I was not prepared to deal with. What happened is my oldest daughter, Taylor, who is now 6, when she was 5, of course, it was her first time to go to kindergarten, and my wife and I, it was so hard sending our first daughter off on the bus to kindergarten. But the good news was that it happened to fall on a Monday, and I usually work out of the home on a Monday. And so I got to be there not only to send her off to school, but also I had the privilege of being home when she came off the bus. So there I was, standing on the porch, anxiously waiting my little girl's return. When the bus pulled up, Taylor stepped off the bus holding a boy's hand. My first thought was, well, that's kind of cute. They probably have a bus buddy or something. But then as they continued to walk, they didn't let go, and Taylor actually held this boy's hand all the way across the street and to the house. And so I'm thinking, what is going on here? Just earlier, she was in love with me still. She wanted to marry me, and now she's holding this boy's hand. So up walks Taylor and introduces me to Hank. She goes, "Daddy, we love each other, and we're going to get married." And I'm thinking, girl, you've only been to school for 8 hours. I mean, how has this happened? So I'm thinking this is kind of funny. So I said, well, guys, I'm curious about something. Here you want to get married and, you love each other. That's great. But, how are you going to survive, you being 5 and all? So they kind of turned and looked at each other and looked back at me and looked at each other again and shrugged their shoulders and went over to the corner of the porch and huddled. Literally, they're huddling, talking about this. How are they going to make it? Well, they came back, and Taylor steps up to the plate first. And so I said, "Tay, how are you guys going to make it?" And she said, "Well, Dad, if it's okay, can we use the little Tyke's house out in the backyard?" So I'm laughing, thinking of them living in this plastic, little 2-year-old, house kind of a deal. And so I said, "Well, sure, I'm sure that'd be fine. But, how are you guys going to make it? There's no electricity. What would you do? How would you live?" So once again, they look at each other, look at me, look at each other, and shrug their shoulders and go back and huddle. This time they talked for a little bit longer and finally came back. And, of course, my new son-in-law steps up to the plate, and he said, "If it'd be okay with you, could we have the TV, a roll of toilet paper, and a box of Lucky Charms?" So it was so funny, but then actually, as a guy, that made sense to me. I mean, I could live 6 months solid just living on those 3 things. I'm high-fiving him saying, "Hey, welcome to the family, son." That story and why it reminds me of the concept of negative thinking is actually, I think, that this is really what happens to couples throughout the course of their relationship. Usually when we first start off, we usually have everything so positive and so wonderful, and we have that same kind of look in our eye that Hank and Taylor had that day. But over the course of a lifetime in a relationship, things can happen that can really turn the relationship around, and a lot of negativity, a lot of conflict can set in. And that's when we begin to have negative beliefs. Really the essence of this session can be found through a quote that I love. The quote goes like this, that men are not disturbed by things, but by the view they take of them. Isn't it interesting that we are not necessarily disturbed by what happens to us, but instead by how we perceive what happens, by the view we take of what happens to us. If you kind of think this through, think in your city that you live in, let's say that a mass trauma comes through the city, maybe a tornado, a flood, maybe something like that has happened to you. Isn't it interesting how everyone that goes through that experience, the same experience together, they don't have the same kind of reactions? As a matter of fact, some people cope quite well with it. Maybe instantly they're over it, or a couple weeks, and they seem to deal with it quite well. But then there's a whole group of other people who seem to be really traumatized by that. And again, I think one reason for that is how those people deal or view think about that trauma that affects them. Those who see it not as a major disaster seem to get over it a little bit better than those who see this as the worst thing that could possibly happen. It's our perception of something that's crucial in an event that takes place. The perception that we have of what our mate does, our loved ones do, our kids, coworkers, how we view them, how we think about them can have a dramatic impact on our relationship. So it's really about perception. As I talk about perception, one of my favorite illustrations of the power of perception is actually by kids, and it's how they perceive marriages. And I want to read you a couple of these because I love these. Kids were asked a series of questions, and one of them was, how do you decide who to marry? So here's their perception of this. Kirsten, age 10, here's her perception of how you decide to get married. No person really decides before they grow up who they're going to marry. God decides it all way before, and you get to find out later who you're stuck with. How about this question? How can a stranger tell if two people are married? Derek, age 8, his perception is, well, you might have to guess based on whether they seem to be yelling at the same kids. I love that one. How about this one? How would you make a marriage work? Ricky, age 10. Here's how he perceives you make a marriage work. We should actually get him in to teach one of these videos. It's so great. Tell your wife she looks pretty, even if she looks like a truck. There's so much wisdom in that. My wife hates it when I call her a truck. And this is probably my very favorite one. And this is concerning the proper age to get married. Carolyn, age 8. 84. Because at that age, you don't have to work anymore, and you can spend all your time loving each other in your bedroom. Isn't that great? I mean, isn't that just a wonderful perception? I know that we all have something to look forward to when we hit 84. The power of negative thinking in your marriage, the power of how we perceive each other and what we do can have a dramatic impact. Let me ask you this, as you're sitting there at home. How many times do you ever view your mate in a negative light? How many times do you ever draw negative conclusions based on why your mate does something? I think if we're all honest, I too should be raising my hand, because I think we all experience negative thinking. Negative thinking is so powerful in a relationship because how one mate perceives or interprets what the other one does can be far more important in determining marital satisfaction than those behaviors themselves. I mean, think about that. It's not what happens in our marriage that can predict marital satisfaction. It's how we perceive, it's how we interpret what happens that can be far more important. Renowned researcher Dr. Scott Stanley, he has done some research with a gentleman named Dr. Howard Markman. And one of the things that they discovered about marriages is this, that they are able to predict why marriages end because of 4 crucial elements. They call them risk factors. They found that there's 4 things that usually happen in a relationship that predict whether a couple is going to stay together for a lifetime or perhaps will end in divorce. One of the 4 is negative thinking. We know that negative thinking is one of the reasons why couples divorce, and it's again why we feel it's so important to include this topic as you learn how to really mentor couples, as you learn how to better prepare couples, as you learn how to deal with marriages. We have to understand, first of all, what negative thinking is and why it's so important in a relationship. What is the impact it has on a relationship, and then what can we do about it? And again, that's what we're going to do over the course of our time together. To really set up this whole concept of negative thinking, I need to take you through what kind of happens over the course of a relationship and how negative thinking really develops. I want to show you a video clip real quick. It's a video clip of my wife and I at our wedding day. It's during our reception, and someone had asked us the question, what was your favorite part of the wedding, or how did you get engaged? What was your engagement experience like when you popped the question? I want you to notice what we look like, how we act, and just see how positive we are, because it's how most couples start off in their relationship.
Gosh, I'm in daze, but just standing up there, holding her hands, and just looking into her eyes, I just knew how much I loved her, or Aaron, love you. And that was just such a great feeling, realizing that I found the woman of my dreams, and just what a great time, and everything still hasn't sunk in yet. I can't even believe I'm married, but you know, we have, you know, the rest of our lives to realize that. So I love you.
I just want you to know I love you, and I'm excited.
Did you have a favorite part of the wedding?
Favorite part? You mean the whole week? The whole week? My favorite part was probably before we even started. We got to go up to Sedona on Wednesday. That was a great part. Yeah. But this whole thing has just been a blast. This has been awesome. It's been great.
I took her up on, you know, where the Dreamy Draw Mountains are, and I hiked up tables and chairs all day long, and I had this beautiful dinner and music playing, and right when the sun was about to set, and just dropped down on my knees. She didn't even know what was going on.
He told me to get ready to go mountain climbing, and so we went mountain climbing, and we were walking up the dirt trail, and I looked to my right, and there was a table set up with 4 chairs, and there was roses, and music was playing, and he said, let's go up there.